to get a wiretap on Chase's house. I can't just do that. I have to go to a court, talk to a judge and say, Judge, here's what's going on. Here's why we have a reason to suspect Chase or somebody Chase is associated with. We would like to tap his phones. And I have to present that evidence to that judge. And they have to say, yes, that makes sense. You can now tap Chase's phone. Or they go, no, you absolutely, from what you presented to me, it doesn't show me enough cause to give you the warrant to go tap Chase's phone. The same thing if I had a warrant to come into your house. If I say, this person may have participated in illegal drug activity, here's the evidence I have, judge, can I get the permission to go raid their house and execute a search warrant? They say yes or no.
And the key to that is all that evidence is not made public, because that would then defeat the purpose.
It's almost there. So the FISA court, before I was so kindly interrupted by Mr. Johnson, the FISA court allows for those same things to happen, but there would be another level of secrecy. So if it has to do with government intel, something that could violate national security if that information was out, that allows you to do it in a little bit less public of an environment by taking it to a FISA court, presenting it to a specialized judge who does the same things the regular judge does, but it's not open to the public to see all that information. Okay, does that make a little bit more sense on the board of the FISA court? So let's go back to Ms. Crosby. Ms. Crosby, we asked your question again about the FISA court.
I don't remember.
It was in the last political campaign.
Sorry, you lost me.
It was before when we were young.
No, I'm kidding. I asked during the 2016 election, what is your opinion on the information that was utilized to receive the ability to surveil a political campaign, that one side received the ability to surveil another campaign, or private citizens as part of a campaign. What was your opinion about the process and how they went through it, and should they have been given that ability to do that?
That's none of their rights to be able to access and be able to look at the other party's campaign. If I don't even know if they did go through a FISA court or not, but it does seem like it's kind of they did.
Okay, so I kind of have a question about that. So do you know what evidence they brought up for?
Well, they brought a lot of evidence up, but I guess the controversy with it is the evidence that they use to be granted the opportunity to do that. There's question on whether the evidence they presented.
Google Steele dossier.
Yeah.
If you Google that, you'll find out.
Yeah, and I think we've kind of gone outside of the reach of what you all have done. We saw FISA, maybe we got a little detailed with FISA, but I'm going to go back to something maybe that might be more relevant. Do you all believe when you utilize your social media and you get on and you are interacting with friends or posting things through whatever social media apps you use, do you believe that even if you think they're private, or that it goes away?
I mean, I think we're all fully aware that once something goes out on the internet, it's there to stay. We can't, we may delete it, we may try and cover it up, act like we never posted it, but there's always some sort of digital residue. It's always somewhere, even if we can't see it just on our screen. So.
Even on Snapchat, when we send a picture, just a random picture to a friend, that picture has to go to headquarters or something before it goes to a friend. So it's probably saved up there and someone can look at it. So it's still out there even though we think it just disappears.
Why do you think, in your opinion as teens, why do you think today that teenagers take such risks putting things out there about their personal information, their location, what you're doing, when you know or you think that they know it's always out there?
I think part of that is some of us, I don't really know how to properly say this, but some of us don't care as much as we probably should about that. Or it's more of we just want to look a certain way rather than think about where our information is actually going or what the ramification of sharing that is. So I think it's
And
more
do you,
this.
as a follow-up, and as I look around the room, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, probably close to 10 people in this room either sharing or looking. Do they have a right to privacy from the government if they're sharing stuff right now? on any of these social media platforms, and I'm not trying to bust people, I was just.
That's what you guys are on your phone.
That's okay,
But-
please do.
But my point is, do you think there should be a right to privacy from government as it pertains to this or anywhere else if you're using social media platforms? What level of privacy do you think you should have?
I think there should be a level of privacy, I'm sorry. I think there should be a level of privacy, but at the same time, I can see how if we ask like, hey, can we make our stuff more private? Like that could easily like go south because it was the school shooting down in Florida, was that 1 or 2 years ago? Two. If I'm not mistaken, the shooter had been like sharing photos of guns all throughout his social media. I think that at that point, then there should not be a right to privacy for that if you're sharing something that could harm someone else.
Okay, so let's take that, what else could be showing harm? I'm just trying to get you to think about
Yeah.
the balance here. Is knives?
Yeah,
If
I mean-
he had been a knife enthusiast, and I'm not trying to catch you in anything, honestly.
Yes.
If he posted pictures of knives or whatever else, and they say take guns out of it, should they take that and say, hey, we need to surveil that person?
So I think a huge kind of starting point for a lot of these horrible things that have been happening in our country is the people that tend to do these things, especially the shootings, tend to post some kind of manifesto or some kind of like document that basically entails their beliefs and why they're about to do this. And I think that the government really should focus on those manifestos and those early warning signs. And generally they're posted on very public platforms like Facebook. I mean, they're posted on Twitter. Like they're posted just anywhere that these people have access to on social media, and sometimes they may not have a lot of people that they know, so not a lot of people see them. But I feel like if we could spy on those and look at those first, then it could prevent a lot of things from happening.
Chase, how do we find those people unless we're surveilling everybody?
That's the problem.
I think,
That's what I wanted, because you said we should focus on them, but how do we find them unless we focus on everybody and then weed them out?
I think one way you can weed them out, so, and like on most apps, you have a way that you can report someone, or you can report them up to the headquarters of whatever app it is and be like, hey, they're posting all this stuff that it's not right, kind of, like report them for violence or something. So I think that if something is reported like that,
So
maybe
other
that would
users of
work.
that social media platform should be able to report, hey, Alex posted something on her page, it's kind of alarming, you guys should take a look, and then that way
Yeah.
she gets filtered to the top of people who should be looked at, not that you would, Alex. I'm just saying, theoretically. Okay, could you see how that might be abused?
I mean, yeah, definitely.
What if I don't agree with your political opinion, you post something political, or I don't agree with your religious views, you post something religious, I'm gonna start reporting you, and then everybody else who is like-minded starts reporting you.
Maybe like you could filter it for like what they're being reported for, because like if I just went and say I clicked on Chaz's most recent Instagram post and went to report it, there's like for most apps it's like violence, inappropriate
Mhm.
language, and like there's a bunch of options, and then for most of them you have to say why.
Mhm.
So I think maybe if you could do
I like this line of thinking, Mary Page. This is, I think you're right. I think having a self-reporting, because the mass public is going to see it before some individual filtering person at this organization. But that means, Chaz, we also then have to rely on the social media platform to then report that out to a government agency to be investigated, right? Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, they're not gonna go investigate somebody, gonna go see where that manifesto goes, or if those people are gun owners, or whatever the case may be, right? So how do we get this information from Mary reporting it? Is it Mary Page? I'm sorry.
Mary Page.
Mary Page reporting it to the social media platform, and then from the social media platform to somebody in a government or law enforcement role that could then act upon that information.
Well, I mean, with some of the stuff we discussed before, it seems like there's already like a lot of information that gets shared
Mhm.
between the government and maybe Facebook, or a certain amount of like advertisement that goes on. So I think it would be just like the grapevine that is already formed in that relationship. And then, yeah, I guess the connection there is somewhat already made. It's just it would be a subcategory of what they found.
Curious if you all did any research on any other countries or former governments that relied heavily on surveillance of its people. This is Mr. Robinson.
I appreciate that, Mr. Captain.
So when the Egyptian government fell, if you all remember that a few years ago, this was actually related to those whole like programs that governments are buying, like these groups of people that they're buying their tech from to spy on like civilians. When the Egyptian government fell, they apparently were buying tons of software from like hacking group, and then there was a German company that they were also buying a lot of software from, and then they were using this software to basically spy on civilians, like without the civilians having any knowledge of this, and basically trying to weed out like abolitionists and revolutionaries and all these people that were in opposition and trying to pinpoint them. And since Egypt, I would say, has a lot less people than America, I would say that's also maybe a bit easier for them to go about doing, and they did do this, and they actually put a lot of people in jail for speaking out against the government. And during that whole period, they were highly using the government surveillance like technology from these independent companies around the world.
Is that good or bad, Chase?
I would say I don't really know the whole reason for why the Egypt government fell, but if the people were like bad, I would say it's good. But if they were like wanting revolution, then I would say it's bad. It really depends. With America, I would say that I would be terrified if like we signed away all our rights, and if we didn't agree with the government and as civilians wanted to rise up, and then, you know, like the government has control of our phones and everything we own, and we wouldn't be able to post anything or have any calls or anything, I'd say that's a pretty bad situation that we find ourselves in.
Anything, specifically, I'm thinking a great example using Egypt. I'm thinking back 1930s and 40s, Nazi Germany, and I'm thinking mid-1940s to into the 70s and 80s, the former Soviet Union. Did you all do any kind of research on those two governments and how they surveilled their people? And was it more, were the intentions more cynical? Were the intentions like more devious? Or, and it's okay if you didn't go back that far, just curious.
I personally didn't, but I kind of have a basic knowledge of both.
Okay.
Might be able to answer something.
Sure, you want to try to summarize why they were surveilling their people and what the end game was for them, why they were surveilling?
So I think for one of the end games, it could have been so for Nazi Germany, it was mainly trying to get the whole country under control so they could take over most of the world in Europe, right? So I think that part of that, if they had their own citizens under control, they already had one country fully passive to what they were doing. So if they could figure out what their citizens were doing every minute of the day, they could then use that and start branching it out to other countries. They could start surveilling the whole world. Then they could turn the whole world to Nazi Germany. But I'm sure that's probably incorrect.
So you're going on the right path. I mean, do you know some of the categories of people who were specifically under surveillance? And then what, because you were definitely going on the right path. I mean, because they did want to have a race of, right, we all look the same, we all act the same, we all have the same thoughts and beliefs. So could you imagine like that sort of mentality with surveillance here in the United States? Yeah, that kind of, it would go in conflict against our Constitution, right? Mm-hmm. So I'd just be curious to get your thoughts around that.
I mean, I was just going to say that the idea of that is absolutely terrifying, but
It's like, in relation to like the people who are being monitored, I think that usually those with power would be like a huge concern. Anybody who would have the potential of like ending what they're trying to build up would probably be a huge threat that would be monitored.
So do you think government surveillance in the United States today, as it increases, as terrorism becomes a larger and larger threat globally, and the United States being the world's policeman, do you think that there is the chance of us going down a slippery slope to where government surveillance becomes similar to that in Egypt, Nazi Germany, and the former Soviet Union?
So George Orwell wrote a book called 1984, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. And that's kind of, it coined the Big Brother society, which I'm sure you also know means that basically the government is your big brother, and the government watches you, and the government monitors you, and that's kind of just a complete, I would say that's a dictatorship almost. It's just complete control, complete power by the government, which is not good. But I would say in a slippery slope situation, if we were to let the government have full power and surveillance over us, it could go to a point where the government would know every move of ours, every post, everything. And not to say that they already can't track us and do that stuff, but I don't think they have a reason to, and I don't know why they would, so I don't think they would do that stuff.
First of all, props on the George Orwell. So 1984 was obviously before social media came about. And we're talking about the government surveilling everything we do, every part of our lives, and knowing just really intricate amounts of information about us is bad, right? I think that was kind of the panels. Who do you think has more information about us on a day-to-day basis, government or private industry? It's a trick question.
Doesn't private industry typically end up reporting some stuff back to the government?
Could, but on a day-to-day basis, who do we give more information to, the government or Google, Apple, Facebook, Instagram?
I think what we give more
Definitely.
information is probably
Yeah, we
the
give
private
more
sector.
information to the private industry, but like depending on what we're researching, it could go directly to the government, so.
I'm sure government could get all that information, but they're not getting it initially. It goes through, I think, private industry first.
In George Orwell's day, a lot of that information would have to be gotten by the government. In your generation, you give more information away than the government would ever look to take. Are you aware of that? Social media, posts, sharing. You're not just sharing it with your friends, you're sharing it with everybody, right? So you are giving more information away to private industry than you are giving away, than the government is going to come to get from you. Do we see a problem with that?
I'd say so.
Okay, do we have laws and regulations on what the government can and can't do? Do we have as many laws and regulations on what private industry can and cannot do with the information that you have given them?
Not to my knowledge.
Especially when, like, a lot of these apps will require you to accept the terms of service or accept a form of like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I'll give up this information.
Yeah, because no one's gonna read the 47-page terms and conditions.
You just beat me to my next question. How many of you have read the entire terms and conditions on Snapchat?
I'm not sure most of us have read past the verse. to be honest.
Do you think they count on that?
Definitely.
Yep.
Probably like in the very middle where they know we won't read all the way to, or somewhere, I don't know, just a little like piece of text that would say that we're giving away all our rights.
When you go online to any website nowadays, it'll say LCA would love to share your location, and you have that option. So how do you feel about that? I mean, like, what do you click? Do you click, yeah, fine, I'll share my location, or no?
Respectful, no thanks.
Okay.
Yeah. Or if I really had to, it's like a map app, like Google Maps or something, it'd be like while using the app. Even then, I still feel a little like, I don't know.
Happy to get to your destination so you can turn them off?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
In 1984, Seth was just happy that he had caller ID. We just had gotten caller ID, which, you know, when a number pops up on the phone, we
Yep.
literally had just gotten that. So when the girls were calling him, he didn't have to, we used to have to take our phones off the hook
Now
if we
no-
didn't want to accept the calls.
Now
so-
nobody believes what you're saying.
Yeah, no.
Or when they're answer machines.
Yeah, exactly, that you actually had to hit play to listen
Right,
to.
right.
So, I have, this is a really easy question. I just am curious what you all learned through your research on this subject area, just something interesting that you've learned through your scope of your research.
I researched a little bit more on the Patriot Act and USA Freedom Act last night. So I found it kind of interesting that it took about 14 years for us to pass the Freedom Act, because it took about 14 years for the government to respond to the citizens being like, we're losing our rights. Hey, you're like kind of violating us, before they passed that to try and cover it all up. So I thought that was interesting personally.
Alex, what did you find was interesting?
I did a little more research on like the Fourth Amendment and how it like stands to protect us and like against unreasonable search. And like the Supreme Court has clarified that the Fourth Amendment applies to people, not places, and that. So, yeah, I guess.
Probably the relation, so we talked about 1984 and how you could draw a lot of similarities. And probably that, like you mentioned that a lot of our information we like give up, and I think in a way that's like a whole another level of surveillance that you can talk about is like, should we be giving these things up? Should we like be able to stand up for this or try and find a way that we can come to an agreement or a kind of balance between the people and those who can hold on to information. So probably just the similarities between what you would consider a dystopian future and what we are now.
And when I was researching, I really tried to link this topic to to the Bible. It was kind of difficult because you don't really expect to find a lot of government surveillance in the Bible. But what I found was that in the Old Testament,